Alright guys, let's see this time how we can turn one Angular application to run inside of a Docker container. So for this, first we'll create our Angular project. We'll just type ng new Angular in Docker, and this will scaffold our application inside of the following Angular in Docker directory. We don't like to use Angular routing for now. It will be a simple application. Very soon the application files will be installed together with their corresponding modules. Alright, we see that Angular has initialized a Git repository for the project, and if we type ng serve, first we enter into the project directory Angular in Docker, and now ng serve. This will start compiling our TypeScript files and creating a bundle, so we can start the compiled version of the project inside of this address localhost port 4200. Let's use this port and host, and that's our Angular application. It's running correctly. So this is the first step to install locally one Angular application. Now we'll transfer it to run inside of a container. So again, we go back to our command prompt. We'll stop the application and we'll start Visual Studio Code inside of this directory. Okay, here is our directory. We'll create a new file which will be called Docker file. I will start setting up the project. First we'll use a base image from Node.js. So we'll type from Node and we'll use this version which is current right now. Then we'll set up our working directory, work there, and then app will be the directory where we'll have our application residing in the container. So we'll copy package.json from the local directory inside of the container app directory. This will optimize our image, so we will not disturb the cache if packages are not being changed inside of this package.json. So we'll have it already built. Then we'll run npm install and we'll install the Angular CLI. Again, we'll have them in one line to create just one layer inside of Docker. So run npm install and npm install global Angular CLI. Again, we'll use a current version 8.3.6. When npm has installed everything from our package.json, which is actually residing on our local directory, and then installed on top the Angular framework, we have our application already bundled, so we can copy the resulting files into the container. So type copy everything from our current directory into the app directory of the container. And the last thing is to start the ng-serve command, which will create a memory server. So we'll type ng-serve and we'll give the localhost address. So that's for the Docker file. So let's recap. We are using a base Node server image. We are creating one directory app where we'll be copying for caching reasons our package.json from the local to the container directory. Then we'll be installing our dependencies as well as the Angular CLI. And when everything is ready, our project will be the resulting files will be copied into the app directory of the container. And the last thing we are doing is that we are running ng-serve to serve up our application inside of the container. Okay, we save this Docker file, we create another new one, which will be Docker compose YAML file, and here we'll create our service which will run our container. So first we'll use development version 2.3, and then we'll list the following services. So we'll have service called Angular, and here inside for the build we'll use the context of the current directory. Since we are developing the files inside of this current directory Angular in Docker, we're setting our context to be here, so Docker can use this directory to build up our image. Okay, we set up our context, and then we'll use the current Docker file. So type Docker file. So we will be passing this file for the building of our image. Then we'll specify our volumes. We'll have two volumes. The first one will be of our current application. So we will be mapping our current directory, this Angular in Docker, to the directory app inside of the container. So the moment we are running our container, all those files will be accessible inside of the app directory of the container. They'll be copied there. And then we'll create another volume, and this will be for exposing our app node modules. And this is actually anonymous volume, which means that we would like to preserve the content of the container's directory node modules. So adding of new modules not to reflect the node modules inside of the container. The last thing is to expose the ports towards which we would like to connect to our Angular application. We use the same ports, 4200. We'll be mapping inside and outside of the container. So this will be the port inside of the container, which will be redirected to the same port outside, viewable for us. Okay, that's for the Docker Compose. So we created one service, which is called Angular. We set the context to our current directory. We're using the Docker file, which we previously created, and we set up two volumes. One is for our applications, so like all of our working files here in this Angular in Docker local directory to be copied when this container is created. And the next is we would like to preserve the node modules inside of the container to be protected from changes whenever we start to change contents of our local directory node modules. Then we are exposing the following ports. Now, before running Docker Compose to start up our container, we'll create a new file, which is docker ignore. And inside, we don't want in the first place to include all the things inside of the git and the git ignores file also, which are created directly from Angular, and then node modules. We're doing this because we would like inside of the container itself to create those node modules and not to interfere with our local node modules which we are developing into. We save the file, and now it's time to go to the terminal once again, where we'll be running Docker Compose and then up, and this will read our files and will build and run a new container. So first we are grabbing the node version. Okay, we're changing into our app working directory. We have already the image for node. We're copying our packages. So these are the local packages. These are inside of the container, and inside of the container we are installing our Angular CLI. One thing to notice is that we had one container with our node image. Afterwards, we removed this container. We're using multi-stage build. This means that in the end we'll be having very lighter image of our container running only the Angular web server. Now we see that Angular CLI has been installed also. Okay, so the application is created, and with a copy we're transferring the application into the app directory, and from then on we are serving the application. We're creating another container, and inside we'll be serving our application. The project is accessible on this port. We are redirecting it to the same port on our local machine. Alright, let's see in our browser. Actually, we should see the same content, but this is from within the Angular. We can go in the terminal, and in another terminal we can type docker ps, and we see our container is running. Okay, the next thing is to see whether we can edit the code. We'll go to our TypeScript file, Angular in Docker, inside Docker. Let's go into our browser, but before, let's click on Ctrl S to save and monitor the output of the container. We see that immediately when we click on save, all those changes have been detected and the container is updated. So if we go to here and refresh, we see the title is now Angular inside Docker. This means that we can easily develop applications inside of Visual Studio Code and transfer them into the container. And that's it, guys. Thank you for watching.